Welcome to the Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. Jimmy is a veteran U.S. Navy SEAL, a former protective officer for the CIA Global Response Staff, founder and CEO of the Able Shepherd Program, a husband and father of 4, and a personal friend of mine. Now here's Jimmy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. I'm your host, Jimmy Graham. Joining me today is our out-of-towner guest, the 86er Jason Campbell. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Better than I deserve.
Likewise. Behind the camera, making it all go, is BK, Able Shepherd 051. How you doing, sir?
Doing awesome.
Right on. Making it happen. All right, guys. We're going to take a minute and talk about, I want to sum up the tragedy that happened in Texas. We've had a lot of airtime lately, both locally, nationally, Western Conservative Summit. We get to talk about pieces of this. People are looking to us right now. We need to take some time and spell out what we see going forward. So I'd like to just to go there, more of a public safety announcement type message, because we say it this way: you learn a lot when you do something for a living. When you do it all day, every day, like this is what we do every day, but Sunday, and I feel like we're further down the field than most, and that could add value to other people. So let's jump right into it. So to bring us up to speed, we were in on the day of the tragedy, I was sitting right here, was in a meeting. We were talking about business, and I looked up at my phone because it just kept going off. Typically it's buzz, and you check it out or whatever. We're in a meeting, so I wasn't, but it just kept going off. And I looked at it, saw what was going on, pulled up the news, and saw, I think at that time, 16 confirmed. So it was horrific. And I take these personally when they happen, because we're trying to move the needle in this industry to prevent such things. So I feel like I'm not moving fast enough. We're not doing enough. And I turned my phone around and said, we need to work harder, right? And I read what was going on, what we understood from there. And that's how this whole thing started. The number grew, and we're learning more and more now. So when people ask, what can we do? There's such a broad panel of everybody being asked. And I mean this respectfully when I say this isn't law enforcement, this is protection. Meaning the answer doesn't mean it won't be from law enforcement. I'm just saying the answer isn't historically from law enforcement. I think it's a protective issue. And that's why I've mentioned Dan Bongino. I was on Dan Bongino on Saturday, and he's a protector, like a professional protector that went to school and trained to be a protector, right? Just like GRS, Global Response Staff, is bodyguards for the CIA, so diplomats overseas working for the Central Intelligence Agency. Dan Bongino was Secret Service. There's extensive protection training that must be, there's a standard, you must pass it. And then if you do that long enough, it starts to just, stick to your skin, right? It just makes sense. So we've narrowed it down. I've narrowed it down to 3 areas. And the first one I talk about is people. So we talk about training people and adding value to people. One of the big things that I've been saying a lot is show me. There just must be a defendable standard. You must be able to do this. The standard must look like the actual response, like the thing we're asking you to do. You must be tested on that. And it can't be obviously got to choreograph it a little bit so it can be the same standard for everybody. But it should replicate the thing, especially when it's life and death. If you got a firearm in your hand, and you got to, let's talk about GRS for a second. For weeks, these people came from a special operations background. Then they had to do a standard that was designed around protecting diplomats overseas. That's not what they've been trained for, but they're coming in kind of ahead of most because they understand firearms. They understand efficiency. They understand violence of action. They understand, how pieces of this work. They just have to put it in a new format. That is what I believe is the answer. Run, hide, fight. Now let's bring it back home, because I've heard people saying, hey, that battleground thing isn't really translating well into schools, or these aren't Navy SEALs, or these aren't SWAT police officers. I understand that. We say it like this: everyone, in an emergency, everyone has a responsibility. Everyone has a job. So to say, I don't want a job, like if we're talking about, most of the time when I hear that, people are just thinking guns. Like, I came in to teach. I didn't come in to tote a gun and have the responsibility of carrying that thing around and doing all this. And I totally understand that. And I'm not a tactical medic, and I don't want you, putting that on me. But my response would be, run, hide, fight was a good start, right? Run, then hide, then fight. Yep. And it was chronological. The problem is it was an emergency doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You don't get to pick that this happens and this happens and this happens. If something happens, you need to decide. It's on you. And that's what people don't want to hear. It's on you. This is your responsibility, because if we put out blanketly that you should do X and then this person does X and that was the wrong situation, they're by an exit and we told them to fight or whatever, and then they fight and lost. Like, they should have shut out the exit. Now there's liability from the person who told them to do it. Okay, this is not the way this works. Nobody wants this to happen. People say, I didn't sign up for this. Nobody signed up for this. So we say it this way in defend. Let's redefine this and then go back into the conversation. We say the defend modules, D.E.F.E.N.D. And the first thing it says on the very top is that the situation will dictate the order of these modules. It means there's 6 things that you need to know, 6 areas that you need to visit, at least mentally, even physically, is to go down and learn 6 steps. You don't have to memorize them. You need to know them. And if you want to say run, hide, fight to get you thinking, that's fine. But you need to know this stuff. It's defense, evacuate, fortify, emergency medical aid, notify others in your immediate area, and then dial 911. That spells D.E.F.E.N.D. Right? So to say, I don't want to defend children means I don't want to do any of those. I just want to stare at the wall. I'm like, that's not acceptable. You don't get to choose that, right? When I drop off my kids, we just talked about this. When I drop off my kids at school, because I would die for my kids, I'm going to protect my kids. When I drop them off, I'm their protector. I drop them with you. You're now their protector, right? And it doesn't mean you're accountable if something happens to them. If you do the best of your ability and something happens, people, I get it. There's still grace in there. Just like if there's a police officer, there's a security guard, and they did all they could, and the person still died. I understand that. Yeah. So I don't think that whole, like, that's way too heavy for me. The truth of the matter is that was the role anyways when you became a teacher or a professor.
Well, and I think that if the opportunity was created for the education around that, around that defend module, I think a teacher that might have in the back of his or her mind, I signed up to teach social studies. Wait, is that still a thing? Do they still teach social studies? I don't know, but
should. Better start.
Yeah, I'm a social studies teacher. I am not a firearms expert, so I didn't sign up to pack a gun to school. It's a different conversation when you say everybody has a responsibility, everybody has a job to do, and I think what's critical to that, and we've talked about this in the past, which is education. And I think if the opportunity was created for schools, for teachers, for administrators to get educated on that defend module, to understand the universe of possibility in terms of those jobs that fall under that module, I think anybody that's in those buildings can absolutely identify with different levels of that defend module and say, I'm on board with that.
And that's the way I feel about it. With accountability, it's, if you look at that and say, none of that is for me, I will do none of that. You won't dial 911.
Really?
Like you won't evacuate kids if there's a gas leak. You won't evacuate kids. You're just going to bolt and leave them. Right. I'm not okay with that. So nobody's asking you to pick up a gun and become a marksman when you're Mrs. McGillicuddy and you're 60 years old. We're not saying that. Yeah. We're saying all 6 of those, those are areas that they're tools for success. Mm-hmm. You cannot be successful if you don't have the tools to be successful, right? So it's like, if you've got these areas and you understand these are some areas that may apply to me, it's on you to pick them. You must pick what's best for you in your situation. Mm-hmm. But because you're there with a bunch of 5-year-olds, it means now you must do your best to protect them as well. So that's what we're stating. Mm-hmm. So that people part is the first part of that. The second part, we've said making architectural design improvements, right? Now that can be building schools differently, and then tap into technology. And I've said this forever, is technology exists to make a human response more effective. Cameras are great. There is a time for cameras. They can catch people. They see people. They see what's going on. We need to find this guy because they run around town doing bad stuff. And they're fantastic because if he had cameras, now the guy ends up in jail, and that's great. But in that shooting and violent encounter, then they're going to record what's going on, right? Was it the Parkland school? I believe it was Parkland, where they were watching a video of 20 minutes ago, right? And they're trying to move in. It just means that ship is sailed. They did their job and they recorded, but that ship is sailed. It's a done deal. It's already over, right? So to understand that. So we know this as CEPTED. You know this too. We did the basic course together. I went back and did the advanced, and you're going to do the same to just understand who are the players in this conversation. And CEPTED is making a rise. A lot of law enforcement and a lot of administrators for law enforcement and community organizers and builders are going to CEPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. CEPTED alone is not the answer. And I'll say that boldly, and I will show you and prove it to you. A lot of these cases, they're taking target hardening, meaning they're making it less safe because they believe it's going to deter, but they're the first ones to tell you that this is for rationally thinking individuals. If you have rationally thinking individuals, I can put in more windows, paint some murals, do all this, make it look softer. They're less likely to commit some kind of atrocity. But if you have an irrational thinker, somebody who's just for whatever reason, they're done and they're coming to shoot a school and none of that works and they walk right in the front door, you've made it worse because you made it a glass door. You didn't want it. And I'm about done with this conversation. We don't want it to look like a prison. It's like, I don't know that I care much about your opinions about looks, right? Because I've worked in embassies before and neither do I, by the way. But if we're talking looks, what looks horrible? A school's covered in blood.
Right.
Like this is a serious conversation right now. Yeah, when you're carting kids out of there, that looks horrible. So to have protective walls, let's say of an embassy, right? Of an embassy, it just means that we come to appreciate the walls so I can just focus on my job, right? There's a wall there. I've got people protecting me, all this in place so we can get back to focusing on what we're doing on the inside, which would be educating children, right? And they're resilient. Now I've got children too, and it frustrates me that people are talking to me about this as if I don't have children. Well, kids are this and kids are that. I'm like, I've got kids and I'm raising kids. And I understand that once you show them something and explain it, they adapt. But they need to be alive to adapt, right? I need to drop them off with you and feel like they're safe, and that needs to be a true statement. So CEPTED meeting target hardening, I believe that's the future where the two of those meet. There are some things for deterrence, cameras, lighting, all of these things, good visibility. Those are all good things, and I would take that from that CEPTED community, but then also talk about target hardening. So when that person does, they don't care anymore. Talking about vestibules or man traps. I call them man traps. It means if I had to come into that door, and this is in the plan that we've come up with, because I've been working on this for years. Everybody, it seems like a lot of the world is like, we should do a thing. Let's start right now. It's like, you're welcome to the party. This started a long time ago, and it's not look at me, look at me. I'm going to show you today in this podcast exactly. Somebody else builds this before us, I'll buy them a beer, right? And it's like, oh, Jimmy's holding on to this thing. No, I'm going to show you right now exactly what it is. Take any piece of this and make your school more efficiently safe. Like make it safe for those children. Who's going to win? The kids. So that's what this whole conversation should be about. We talked about 2 weeks. FYI, this one will last longer. Why? Political. There's an agenda. With elections going on this year, this is going to last longer than 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the standard. People forget in 2 weeks. Not the victims' families, not us, not the family. Anybody involved directly is not going to forget. But the world typically forgets in a couple weeks. This one will drag out longer. One, because it was children, and it's the biggest elementary school one to date, and then two, there's a lot of agenda going on right here, right, with gun grabs and all that. So back to this. If we talk about this, a vestibule. Think of a woman, Mrs. Graham, getting buzzed into the school. They wave, they see her, they buzz her in, and as she comes in, someone pushes through. They piggyback through, and they push her through the door. They've just breached your perimeter. They're inside the school now, and now you have to do something about that, but they're inside the school. They're standing there, right? A vestibule or a man trap could be, now he pushes through, and there's another door. And that door cannot be buzzed open until this one closes and locks. So if this one's breached, now this closes and this one opens. So it's not good for the person trapped in there, but we still have a perimeter, meaning it gives us time to assume some type of posture, right? The posture, now that's going to come from the people. So when we talk about that, now we're back into that, do you have a capability?
Yeah, that's also not good when you forget something in your car and you're part of that faculty.
Right.
Like, because it's like added steps, added time, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's a price all of us are willing to pay as a little inconvenience to have to get buzzed in.
Brother, that word is more powerful than we've talked about that with Amazon. Convenience, like in when you're living in the age of luxury, which our society is right now, it's American, and it's there's more to that word than I first thought, right? So to me, like, what do you mean? I can see my car out the window. If I use the salt melt, like the ice melt, and put it next to the door, I can go out there and grab that, and it's more fresh air. And then we just saw that where the door was actually unlocked or propped open. So those kind of things are just. I don't think it was. I think it was pretty common knowledge that schools are attacked, right? We've learned lessons in Columbine and STEM, and I mean, we live in Colorado, so there's many, right? So it's not like people don't know. Yeah. So when we talk about that first thing, we talk about the first thing was people and getting them trained, meaning understanding that there are many things that could be done, and you must do something. Like nothing's not an option. Second part is the building. And then the third part is that culture. We'll get to that in just a second. So the vestibule, going into the vestibule and going and having this school. So what we came up with, years ago, first literally I wrote it on a napkin, contacted an architect. He drew it. It was like a hand drawing to get the concept down. And then it wouldn't leave. So I kept revisiting and just here and there. And then I hired another architect to do an actual floor plan. Then we modified the floor plan and then we put color to it. And then we have walkthroughs. So the first part of it, the overall concept is this, and it came from a fear of something happening at my daughter's house. I don't live a life of fear, but this is on my mind with knowing this is a possibility. I work in Centennial. My kids go to school in Lone Tree. So if something happens, it's going to take me 10 to 15 minutes max no matter what I do, right? And that's way too long. In 2020, you could call 911 and nobody shows up. Right? And especially if you're a smaller school. If you're a big school, if there's some kind of emergency in a large school, everybody's going there. Then if there's another, it's oldest trick in the book is a diversion, right? There's a diversion here and then another attack. There's many books about this, but if that were to happen, they get no one. They get 0 police officers, right? So it really bothers me that there aren't people closer because I can only do so much. In a model like this, I could potentially be working in that building. Let me explain that. On this design, one end is a school, and I've not developed that thoroughly because I don't build schools. Someone who, I'm going to partner with someone who builds schools, and they're going to create a school that's best for the teaching environment, right? But the other part, there's a courtyard in the middle, and this is not a new design; it's a very old design. Back when there were threats and they were external, there were courtyards again, so people could just go about their lives. And it's not a prison; it's a beautiful park. There's trees, there's grass. They're hanging out, doing their thing, outdoor classes, all of that. So it literally is like your little city park right in the middle of here. It bothers me that I'm by STEM the other day. This is the 3-year anniversary of the school shooting that happened in STEM. I drive by and there's just a ton of kids playing in the parking lot, right? So that is just very, very vulnerable in a place that has, had never happened here. It happened here. Right. And then you fast forward 3 years and we're playing in the parking lot again, right? Yeah. So having them protected physically to where now it's just a matter of which entrances and exits are maintained, and that can be through technology. Somebody's on the property, that's not good, right? And we know that the building helps. We say it this way: to get to them, you have to go through me. Works since the beginning of time. But now you have the building saying that to get to them, you have to go through the building, through the structure, through the hard stops. And if you're ever messing with the gate, we're going to know because technology told us you're not supposed to be here. So that's that another ring. We call them those concentric rings of security. That's another one that lets us know we have a problem before it's actually a problem. With me so far?
I'm with you.
Okay. So this perimeter is built up of actual local businesses. So I want this model that I foresee being built here locally to be a private Christian school. Why is that? Private, meaning there's so much, and you can speak to this, there's so much red tape. If you want to screw something up but good, why don't you give that to the government to do, right? Yeah. So give it to the school board and see what they come up with, right? And I do like our school board now. We made some drastic changes here in Douglas County that needed to happen, but it must be, somebody has to say, I'm going to go build this and model it for the world, right? Why do I say Christian? Because you know where I stand. I'm not interested in starting broken. Right? If the problem is if I believe truly that this is these biblical foundation, the fundamentals, the values that built this nation, that it's a good model, we just didn't do it right. It's time to get back to the foundation. So a private Christian school. Yeah, the movie that we just saw. Whose children are they? Our friends, Jonathan, Deborah Flora, and Jonathan Flora that put this movie together will turn your gut on what's going on in education today.
Private Christian school.
Private Christian school. So if that's the case, now Obviously, there's going to be tuition paid on this side of it for people going to school. I would love to see a voucher system because I believe that is part of the fix, and I understand the arguments back and forth, but it must be competitive. I must have a choice to say this works better, and then let that trickle down. And people say, that seems to be working. They're actually doing that. Why am I going, let's build another one. Let's build another one. So that must play out, right? So if the people there on the outskirts of the building, those are actual private businesses, right? And you can't get a business front in Castle Rock right now. Like it's such sought after real estate. It means there's a covenant relationship saying that a portion of your staff will maintain a degree of training. People say it can't be done. I'm like, I do it every day. Like we do this every day but Sunday. Right. Don't tell me it can't be done because I can show you hundreds of people that do this and they do not have law enforcement or any kind of tactical background. So I can prove it to you. So, but they still want to argue. I'm like, well, what if I could prove it? What if this would work? What if, and they're like, I don't care to hear it. Okay, well, then we see where that gets us. So these people would be working throughout the day. They would not interfere. It gets weird when you have like the watchdogs and like these dads coming in. And if you got great people, it can help and it can add value. But we've seen that go the other way with churches and schools where there's dads hanging out, and now it's kind of a burden. It was cool when it started, but now it's a burden. Like, we just want to teach kids, man, and you guys are in here messing around and doing whatever. It just means that now they're focused on this. You wouldn't be in the courtyard at all. You're just running your business. But if a light goes off in that ceiling and there's an emergency, you're going to go through your back door. You're going to go through a secure corridor, and you're going to make your way along the outskirts of that corridor, and you're going to get into that school. It provides a 30-second response time within that school on any given school day. So you're not paying security guards. I saw in one instance, it was each SRO, it's like $90,000 minimum to get one more school resource officer. $90,000 per person, and you need a team. It can't be one person, right? So if you're the person, it's SRO, and the kid's going to go like, they know who you are, so they shoot that guy, and now there's nobody. We're back to that, right? Yeah. So we need to understand that the cost savings of this is that person is also paying a lease. I'm a business owner. And I would put my money where my mouth is and lease the space. I say, I'll take these spaces, and then I will be there. My staff and I will be there on any given school day, and business stops if there's an emergency. Very unlikely, so it means that's not going to threaten your business. But if it did, I would do it anyway. Right. You know what I mean? Most people would. But now you're going to do it untrained. So to maintain a training, what I've seen is when you add that responsibility to individuals, dignity shows up. That pride and this. I'm just going to be sarcastic. I'm not going to. Maybe I will. Honor still means something here.
Yes.
Right? And when we state that, people go, you know what? Me too. Like when you give somebody dignity and respect and they feel honor, you see it. You see people walk taller out of these doors than they do coming in. And I absolutely love that. And that too, in that is also the answer. So people that might be over there selling shoes, right? And it's become a job, but then he's also here to protect these children. So he stands a little taller that day. And then we drill that. We practice it regularly. This is part of the thing, and that forms community. And then you start doing stuff together, and you're in that school all the time because you're running it when there's kids aren't there, right? So you know it inside and out. You invite local law enforcement in to know it inside and out, and then you just get back to living your life. But what that adds is confidence, it adds honor, it's dignity, it's all of that. There's no cost monthly to do that. A little bit of buy-in for we are going to train periodically. Maybe it's once a quarter. Once you get a standard, if you don't have a standard, you start with chaos. Right. So there must be something. And if there's a better idea out there, I would love to see it. I haven't seen it. Say words.
They're helpful. Words are helpful sometimes. I haven't seen a better model. And I've been in many, many schools from Alaska to Florida in every socioeconomic setting there is, from very affluent private charter schools and then very not affluent. And what you just described, I've never seen any model even close to that. The other thing you just described is it's the shift between the model that we seem to operate from even today after all of these events, starting with Columbine. We seem to anchor in on a reactive model. And I think we've talked about, conceptually before, we've talked about the differences between reactive and proactive and how slow and expensive it is to react to what's around us versus what does it look like to proactively shape And so what you just described is the proactive opposite end of what this country has been fumbling around with for some decades now. And it's absolutely ludicrous to not change right now.
I had Vicente Reyes was as a Fox 31 reporter, just asked me what's the cost, and I don't know because I haven't built a school, but I can't imagine that it would be greatly more expensive than building a school and building the business. It's just connecting them, right? So that space in there, that where they would play, obviously there needs to be trash. But we figured all that out. We've got an idea for all that stuff, but it's not grossly more expensive than building separate businesses and a school, right? So to be able to have that relationship and build that would create a community that's willing to actually do it, right? So I love that about it, because I'm not a big fan of having huge schools, like these crazy schools with like thousands and thousands of people. Like these, they're ginormous, and if you look at it from a defendability standpoint, it's a rough one. It's about as hard as it gets, right? Hardest thing's churches, because they're just open for anybody and everybody, which means you must train. You must have a game plan, because it is wide open and you're inviting everybody in. You can't have a perimeter, right? Because it's not designed that way, nor should they. But in schools, it's a different thing. It's very clear that now that this, if you want to hurt children, that's where they gather. And that's we're seeing this theme where other people want to hurt children, even if it's children. So what do we do? So we keep pushing this forward and trying to get this in front of people. But we said people, getting them trained to those 6 modules as a starting place. And that's not it. It's not like trying to say we got it all figured out, but this is a healthy place to start, because we've been doing it for years. It's a good way to look. It's not what somebody's plan is. What have they done? What are you going to do for the next 5 years? What have you done in the last 5 years? This is actually what we do. And then the building, getting that building with some SEPTED principles and then some target hardening, and then try it. Yeah, we've thought about this for quite a while. Like, make it, I truly believe if you built the model school for the nation, most of the technology and equipment would be paid for or greatly discounted by the vendors who want to be in the national model, right? It's got to be affordable. If it's not affordable, it's not sustainable. Right. You see all this money getting thrown away, like just getting pushed out there in every direction, and it's always coming up. People, after a while, it comes out with COVID money, whether it's money that we're pushing off to Ukraine. We've got all of these threats at home, and we're supporting all these wrong things. So I want to make sure, and nobody wants people to die in a foreign country and all that stuff, but nor do we want 19 children dying here. Right. In our community in Castle Rock, this burns me down in Douglas County. I said, there's all that money sitting in the bank that was from 3 years ago. They've already congratulated themselves for spending that money. It's still in the bank. Half of it's still in the bank, right? I don't understand that. I don't understand how people aren't furious about this. So to be able to fund something like this and be the first one in the nation, and they say, well, you can't just revamp all the schools. You know how much money those would cost? I understand that, but somebody's building a school right now. Somebody's got plans to build another school. I actually talked to a school that is looking to come into Castle Rock. And I said, would this be an option? And I just, you got to plant a seed and then back away and then let them see it, right? And then do it again and then let them see it. The other thing is, any lesson that this school would learn, every school would benefit from. Right? I don't want to protect just my kids' school. I want to protect all schools. I don't just love my kids, I love all kids. So to be able to pour into this model and then prove it, and any part of that you can replicate. Maybe it's build a wall here. Maybe it's do this. Maybe it's do that. Maybe it's add an external wall just to build a courtyard. But then actually, here's the part that I don't think people want, because it's change and actually takes some effort, is that you are going to have to drill. You are going to have to practice. And that culture part, that's like you said, if that culture doesn't change, you could spend $100,000 on a door, somebody props it open, you bypassed everything. You breached your own perimeter, and they got you. On that day, they got you. You didn't know evil was even lurking, wasn't even a possibility, because it'll never happen here, and then it does.
It's just, it's the drills. It's conceptualizing that responsibility shift, and maybe the shift is an expansion more than a shift, like a lateral shift. It's an expansion where you proactively educate on that defend module. And because you have all of those schools who are full of teachers, administrators, and volunteers that are absolutely on board with doing a fire drill.
Yeah.
Like they do that multiple times a year. And Why do they do that? Why do they engage in that? Because it protects the children. It protects the people that are under their care in that moment. And it makes sense. And they know exactly where they're walking to in that fire drill. They know exactly what they're leaving behind in the classroom in that fire drill. And I haven't read in the news in the last 30 years about a school burning down, burning even one student, never mind hundreds of students.
Yeah.
And yet everybody is on board and willing to do those drills multiple times a year. I think this one's a pretty simple expansion on those commonly adopted principles.
And that's a good point. Though, I've been in schools and they're not excited about them. Like, today's a fire drill, whatever. But they do it, right? The kids, we get outside, right? I've been cramped up in here. But it is that complacency. Like I said, in Benghazi, Libya, there was complacency. Like, come on, it never happened here, right? Until it does, right? It does. I say schools are not high risk. This week, I've heard this. This week, you're more likely to get an accident in a car than being You're going to say that this week? Because you think that those families want to hear that? Say that in Texas right now, around this town, right? But it blows me away, this complacency, this comfort of like, I'm going to say words, so I have to do nothing. Like you throw something out there where there's no action required, and then everybody accepts it, and then you just stay on the couch. That makes me crazy, right? So to be able to make that change and then prove it is a huge deal, and I think it's time.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
All right, brother. So we've got let's sum that up. We've got the people that there is a training that's required to understand that what are those 6 areas, those 6 tools, we'll call them, for success. You can't expect people to be successful unless you give them the tools to be successful. Second thing is the building, the architecture and the design. That can help out quite a bit. And then third thing is that culture. You must change the culture. We say, whose job is it to keep this school safe? The answer needs to be mine. If everybody says that, we will get further down the field. And I want to caveat with this. We've done this. Like, don't tell me it can't be done. Like, there's schools that I've been to that we have taught them this. Sometimes I went down the street and built a relationship with a company that was down the road, and we said, if there was an emergency, would you protect these children? I said, absolutely, with our lives. Cool. And I go back to the school and I say, can we do a drill? And your new reunification point, rally point and reunification point is down the road at this business. And on Thursday, can we do a drill? And they say, yes. We line up a bunch of kids. We do the drill. They get a head count. We walk down the block. We got this way, primary and a secondary route. Primary, just beeline fast. Go down the sidewalk to this business, in the door, meet the owners, and then just leave. We say, if you tell them they forget, if you show them they remember. Then there's a plan B, a second route. Why is that? Because we've seen if there's a threat. So if there's a gas leak or something, there's no external threat, it was something like that, take them down the road, be efficient. But if somebody's trying to hurt them, you don't want to go down the road. We've seen that, where you line up children or people down the road and there's somebody with evil intentions that has a vehicle, right? That could be another weapon. So the second route was actually through a vacant lot, kind of into some ditches and all this stuff. They hugged a fence. They got down on the service road. They walked back. Took a few more minutes, but they got to the same place. But there was a different objective, right? And when they're doing it, these teachers are texting me throughout the year. Hey, it's a sunny day. We're taking a walk down to the reunification point. So if they know where they're going and a teacher says, like my daughter, Rebecca, get them there, she would. She's 14. She's a leader. She'd be like, these kids will get there. And every time they stopped at the road, they would do this. No cars, no cars, no cars. And they would run across the street. And they'd go to the next road. No cars, no cars, no cars. Run across the street. How do I know that? Because I've been training her that since she's 3. Right? This is not a today thing. It is a gradual thing. My kids have been training, just having fun, but they've been training this stuff since they were really, really little. Now they just do it. Like to me, we're going through grocery stores, they're doing all this kind of stuff, and it's just the way they do it. But the kids around them are more safe because they do it. So it's time that we as a community say, I am going to train my kids this way. I am going to have some buy-in. The responsibility part just reminds me to say this. Accountability dictates that I state this. It's not their job. It's your job. It's my job to protect my kids. It's my job to educate my kids. And I can pay taxes and choose the people that are going to be with me on that path. Like if you're going to help me educate my kids to my values, I'm going to bring them here and you're going to do it. We're going to partner in this. I'm going to protect my kids and you're going to help me with that. I'm going to pay taxes. You're going to get paid to protect them while I go to work. That's how this works, right? And we, the people, must make that correction because it's even with that movie that we saw on what education has become, it's so out of whack. It's not even close to where it started.
Right.
Final thoughts.
Man, I'm looking for like when you ended with that, and my brain went to looking at how in a lot of schools, those poor students are under attack from within. And that attack is in the form of both curriculum and physical harm. And what I hear is hope. I hear a model. I hear a solution. I hear something that's implementable. That's a good thing. And it's imperative. And there's no way to overstate it. And you're absolutely right. There are schools in the planning phase right now. There are schools that are in the just the math of population growth. They know they need new schools in specific areas. And then there's the renovation of existing. And those are in plans right now. And to me, it's insane to think about doing the same old thing. It's insane to think about softening those locations for some of those environmental design aspects. That's insane. So the challenge is to create an amplified voice for that actionable change. And part of that is, that's, one of the other reasons I like that charter model is it seems like there's a more of a direct investment and more of a as parents of students, input on the shape of it versus getting handed whatever the public system tells you you're going to take. Mm-hmm. And so I like that model for some of those other reasons as well. So anyway, I think that's refreshing to hear a solution that's so thoroughly thought out. Yeah, it still needs some polishing, but I tell you what, it's far, far, far down that developed line compared to any other solution that's in the national conversation today. So kudos.
And I think that it is a team effort, meaning this. This shouldn't be me doing this, right? If you build schools, call me, ableshepherd.com, find the number, let's get in touch, let's talk about this. If you want to become financial partners in this, if you're a teacher and you're sick of this stuff and you're like saying, hey, I tell my kids this, it's not our job to save the world. That's already been done. It's our job to try. Right? My kids will see me fighting all the way through. Like till my dying day, this is what I will be doing in some way, shape, or form. I will be shepherding people. That means I'll be protecting people. I'll be training people. I'll be leading people. We were going to grow together because that's my definition of shepherding. That's a calling on my life. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing, and I shouldn't be doing it alone. So I'm inviting anybody and everybody who wants to talk about this. Let's have a conversation. Let's get this done, and let's model this for the rest of the nation because it's costing us dearly with the greatest assets we have on this planet. That's they call it arrows in your quiver. These are our children. This is literally what we talked about last podcast was people are so bent they want to kill Jesus. They want to kill Jesus Christ. The image of God, the most innocent, vulnerable image of that is unborn babies. And if you can't get to that, where do kids gather? And we're going to go in there. I'm going to kill as many as I can. This must be stopped today. All right. BK, any final words, brother? That's a fantastic point. Thank you, brother. Any of this is applicable to your home or your business or a bank. Like all of this stuff, you need to have a D.E.F.E.N.D modules plan for your home. If you need to leave your house, where are you going? You need to have, if you live in a house and you have a family, you're in charge of protecting them. So defense, evacuate. If you had to leave your house, where are you going?
Where are you going?
May come a time when you have to leave your home for whatever reason. You better have a plan, or else you're standing there with your satchel, on a stick, and you're like, where are we going to go? Fortify. Can I just come in and kick your front door? And you need to make sure that thing's fortified. Emergency medical aid. There's some things you should know if you're in charge of a family. Notify others in your immediate area and dial 911. We have to know this stuff. It's always been, we've said it, this way in the past. This isn't a new thing. This is an old thing. We just got comfortable. We haven't needed it. That's starting to change, and we need it again. So it's time to revisit it. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. I know BK's got some stuff, man. He's back there just thinking.
Goodness.
Cool. All right. With that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you again, my brother, for being here in town and on the podcast. BK, as always, thank you, sir. Keeps the wheels on the bus, makes all the magic happen. Again, this episode brought to you by Able Nation. If you need help with your schools, churches, civic groups, man, we've been doing this a long time. I hate to say, I told you so, we've seen this coming. We just wanted to get ahead of it. And that's what we're going to be doing. So if you could use some assistance because you're in charge of other folks and taking care of them, reach out to Neil at able-nation.org. All right, guys. So this one's a wrap. See you guys soon. Until then, God bless each and every one of you. Take care of one another.